welcome back, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Gundams Deep Dive Edition. We
Hopefully
are
with less audio problems.
yes, hopefully we are jumping into original Gundam. Isn't that exciting?
Ain't that a trip?
Correcto
So,
mundo. So tell us about original Gundam. We've already lived through Origins. The year one war has already begun. You know, White Base is starting to land on the colony with Amuro and everyone else that will eventually become the crew of White Base. And tell me about Bright Noah at the moments of Gundam.
well, right now at the point in time, at least, he was a lieutenant that was working under I believe, the captain, who was in charge of White Base.
Right.
Right now
Completely
was
understand.
left with the responsibility of White Base really early into his career.
By the ending of Origins, Bright Noah was only 19 years old when he was given command of White Base at the start of original
Yes,
Gundam.
yes. There was a very symbolistic choice from Tomio because he wanted almost the entire crew of White Base to be children in one way or another, or very young, because he wanted to represent what the young felt during war more than anything.
Right.
There's a fun fact that I was reminded of while reading Tomio's manga about the production of Gundam, but it's actually brought up quite a lot in the show. They keep calling the Gundam the White Devil,
Right.
and they also call the White Base Pegasus, or the White Pegasus, or so forth. That's because the original designs of both the Gundam and White Base for the anime were supposed to be completely white, with just lining to differentiate the other parts.
Right.
But of course, at that time, the TV producers didn't like that. They knew they wouldn't be able to sell a toy that had just simple colorings and stuff. So they decided, Tsukuichi, I think his name is. Yeah, Tsukuichi, who was at the time the head animator, decided to literally grab the paper and real quickly painted it blue, yellow, and red in different parts.
Which
And then he
then
handed
makes
it back.
sense why the uniform for the crew of White Base are those color combinations.
Yes and no. I believe that's actually was a choice that was artistically placed in, mostly because the brighter colors for their uniform was meant to show how much of newbies they were at war.
Really? That's what it was to differentiate?
Yes,
Because if you see the crew in Origins, they all have similar uniform colors to what Bright Noah has.
because they're all newbie crew.
Right.
I mean, not everybody had brown uniforms like right now. Only a couple did. Everybody else was wearing the
Of
standard blue
course.
uniform. Yeah, or recruit, and it's. I guess it worked out in a way because it also helped symbolize with this a brand new
Yeah.
mobile
Something
suit
else
and a
that I
brand new.
didn't know until I started doing some research into like Bright Noah and stuff, so we could come to this episode, was that I didn't know that Bright Noah was actually already studying to be a commander. He was like a commander in training, so he already had a lot of ideologies and knowledge and strategy stuff that
Well,
required you to
he
become
had a
a.
basic recruit understanding of
Yes,
this
which is
because
something I didn't know when I first
yeah,
walked into Gundam and when I first watched Origins. I just went, how does Bright Noah end up being such a genius at all this stuff? Then after doing his research, I realized, oh, he was already being trained for this stuff for whenever his actual promotion would happen to become a captain or a commander or whatever it would be.
well, I mean, he he was training for that because he was supposed to be a commander at the end of this. I'm not entirely sure if he was supposed to be a commander for White Base. I'm pretty sure he was just going to end up in another person's ship. But that was just the standard training. It wasn't anything really special.
But
So
what made him stand out? If he had regular standard military training, what made him be different than other commanders? you can't just put it into the ideology
It's
that he had the Gundam with him and he had the gun
he
tank
had to
and the gun
grow.
cannon and stuff. There must have been something about him that made him different.
What made him different in the show was that he had to grow up in this situation of pretty much he wasn't going to get more help.
Right.
The officer's idea of giving him any support was either let's put everybody away and not deal with it, or let's just throw ammunition and canteen at him and hopefully he lives long enough. And this made him understand that he didn't have any support whatsoever from the Air Federation. Because at the end of the day, once the RX-2 was pretty much finished, they decided to build all these other different variations of the RX. And this was pretty much their opportunity to test out what else they could do with it. So they sent the G Defender and all the other possible upgrades to the Gundam at the time. And they threw a bunch of different things at it, trying to see what worked and what didn't. At the same time, realizing that Amuro might be a new type, and this was something to keep an eye on.
Right. It explained when they arrived at Jaburo, they did like a cutaway for this. But it was explained that when Amuro was getting his physicals, they examined his brain waves, and they mentioned a bunch of tests that normally would be done to somebody that you would perceive them to be a new type. Amuro gets to ask the other members if they had similar testing, but as a kind of a nudge to, they didn't actually get that. They did a cutaway, and they had someone else walk in and interfere the scene because they weren't going to say anything yet.
So this is implied in Unicorn, but the Federation and Zeon both had pre-existing information that new types might either eventually be a thing or were already a thing.
Right.
Because of the colony trouble. And that was one of the major aspects of Unicorn in general and the whole Lapras box and everything like that.
Right.
But so that kind of goes to show that this rumor was pretty much confirmed by Amuro, and the military saw this as weapons for the war. We can use this.
Which is very ironic, since near the ending of Original Gundam, Lala kind of explains to Amuro that that's not what new types should be. New types aren't just meant to be weapons, even though the Federation and Zeon were like, we need them to be our war machines. We need them to be our frontline warriors because that's the future of warfare. There were new types like Lala and new types that you see further down the line, the UC timeline, that come to the understanding that that's not all new types are meant to be.
Well, new types knew this. I mean, the biggest thing about new types is that they have an understanding of each other.
Right.
It's the biggest advantage that humanity can get ever. If you can understand someone without getting into arguments, without dealing with emotions sometimes.
Right. So before we move away from Bright Noah and start asking you about other characters, I was really curious also about things with Bright Noah. He displays a lot of characteristics that would normally come from a new type. And while doing research and things that you've mentioned, he's not a new type. He's considered what's called an old type. I'm guessing that's like in between transitionary stage, right? Where you have some capabilities of a new type, but not entirely. Because it was stated in the wiki that Bright Noah had the ability to tell when somebody was like Amuro, but wasn't necessarily him. So he can sense new types.
From our understanding now, from NT and Twilight Axis, old types are pretty much a byproduct of extensive kind of exposure to new types, but old types can also be new types that will eventually become new types after radical exposure to new types. It's not entirely 100% for sure, mostly because all these exposures to new types and the situations they had, it's very likely that he worked kind of like a amplifier, or he himself, his abilities were amplified by new types around him. Whether or not he could have become a new type because of this is completely up for grabs. I mean, you can argue that he wasn't really a space Noid to begin with. I mean, he did a lot of his time in space, but he was an Earth soldier to begin with.
Right.
But I mean, that's irrelevant if you think about the fact that he got a lot. He had a lot of time in space with
Right.
all the wars that happened and everything else. But anyways, moving on. So Bright Noah, as you know, will eventually become a very important figure in the rest of the UC timeline and all the shows that follow. But he literally exploded from just a normal commander into a very capable admiral. And I feel like that was from the events of Gundam that kind of led him to that, because it helped him grow as a commander.
Right. Right. Of course.
He really had to deal with the emotions of the crew, which wasn't simple since they were all pretty much kids. I mean, he wasn't that much better off as an adult. I mean, he was only 19.
Right. Right. Obvious. Tell me about General Revel at this point during original Gundam. We talked about him during Origins, but tell me about him now.
General Rebel had just returned from being kidnapped by the Savis, and he really put the word in saying that we need to fight them, that this is a tyranny that we can't stay with. I mean, he was correct. The Savis were willing to do anything they could to win the war, and to win the war for them, it was a little bit more simple than it was for the Federation. The
Right.
Federation had fought them in their territory and had royally gotten their ass kicked. And this was a full armada that should have had no problem quelling what was supposed to be just a bunch of rebels in the colonies. So for them, it was a simple matter, but after getting their butt kicked hard, not only did it leave their forces demoralized, it also pretty much left an opening for Sion to start invading Earth. I mean, at the time, after they saw what happened, a bunch of collaborative groups that worked with the Earth Federation pretty much went, I'm not really sure you can really help us, or you're really going to be able to protect us. Plus, we don't technically like you either way, so let's do our own thing.
Tell me about the one true bro. Tell me about Slugger Law.
Slugger Law at the time had been quite a bit of an ace pilot, but renowned for having a very quote unquote shitty attitude.
Yeah, you can see that at the beginning, but trust me, stick with him. He becomes the bro of bros.
Yes, he was about to NRT our boy Brian Noah, but he only cocked him this much.
Yeah.
But after
I mean, to be fair, if it had been Slugger and Mirai, we wouldn't have had Hathaway. Hathaway wouldn't have been a thing, and then it would have been Mirai and Slugger.
That on its own is an argument well enough to say, like, I'm sorry, Brian Noah, get yourself some was it Michelle or Rebecca Wickman?
She was such an uninteresting character, and in Double Zeta and wherever else she was in, that I can't bother.
Well, she was only in Double Zeta, so. But she was a little bit in Zeta, I think. I'm not sure.
Whatever. Yeah.
But
She's such an uninteresting character in Double Zeta that I don't even care for her name. And again, no mean to offend anybody that likes them.
If Brian Noah wasn't going to end up with Mirai, he might as well have ended up with her.
Right.
I'm just saying.
Right. So tell me about our boy Ryu, because he was only there for the first half of Gundam, but he was such an important character for the growth of Amuro. So tell me about him.
So he was also a rookie pilot. From his background, he came from a poor family. He was trying to make a name for himself, and at the same time help everybody around. He was pretty much your all-around good guy.
Right.
So of course he was gonna die. That had to happen. There's a reason why Tomio, even by his own close friends, was called the Kill Him Tomio.
Wow, that is so sad.
Yeah, but I do feel like his death worked in so many levels.
Right.
to
helped so much character development, not just for
yes.
Amuro, but you see in the following episodes after that, Bright Noah goes into a deep moment where he gets really sick because he feels that everything is his fault. He's 19, he's young. There's a bunch of things that are not going the way he would want. The military isn't helping him, and he just keeps having pilots and crew members just die left and right. He's at a
I
point where
mean,
he's so distraught that he
I
starts
mean,
growing as a character.
I mean, he's supposed to be the glue that holds everybody together, which ironically was Rio's job
Right.
pretty much for the entire series while he was alive. He was able to understand Amuro and other characters because they weren't military people. They were actually normal civilians that were pretty much brought in into a situation they didn't care for. And Amuro himself, since he had experience piloting the Gundam, was pretty much their only shot at actually surviving. And he understood that. He understood that they were needed, but he didn't feel comfortable with forcing them to conscribe to the military like they were pretty much ended up having to be,
Right.
pretty much. So, because of that, he had this unique connection between Bright Noah and him.
Yeah,
He-
you
he-
can
they-
you can see that throughout the episodes.
Yeah.
Where he understands where Amuro comes from, and he tries to voice to Bright Noah the feelings that Amuro has. There's a point in time, I think it's the episode where he dies, where he says, "Have you even tried talking to Amuro? Have you tried listening to him? Maybe he's a little rebellious because you're not understanding his perspective of a civilian becoming a pilot."
He had a lot of understanding, and he did kind of come off as a big brother, kind of helper
Right.
the whole scenario, and his death just helped Amuro grow immensely. But
Right.
it also left behind a realization to a lot of the rest of the what would have become the crew of White Base, that it wasn't, they shouldn't take life for granted. And you can kind of see this. It wasn't exactly like thrown at you or specified, but you can see this because of how old the rest of the crew start acting, especially the rest of the pilots, I guess you can say.
Right.
And Sailor never really changed. Sailor was extremely responsible with everything she did. She did have her motives, but she still acted in the way that she needed to, except for that small situations where she took the Gundam and almost got everybody killed.
Right.
But that was mostly out of just anger for how the situation was going and the fact that Amuro was their only hope. But yeah, the rest of the crew started acting more proper. They started actually putting their best for the fight, and it really did help. Because
right. So here, tell me about the character development for Kai, because at the beginning of original Gundam, I really didn't like him. He was not likable, but by the ending, he felt like a bro by the ending of it.
Kai, Tomio kind of modeled Kai on his relationship with Kirin or Sikirin, I think his name was, which is the head artist for Gundam.
Right.
He also had a very rocky relationship, and he didn't trust him much. But after working together with him, he developed a very close bond with him, and that was kind of what he put with Kai. He made a character that he wanted to show how even the most untrustworthy of people have their reasons to be the way they are.
Right. Obviously, yes.
And Kai was kind of this throwaway character that was supposed to be someone that you can use for betrayal or something, and at least that's what the TV producers thought that he was going to be. But he was there to show that anyone can grow in life,
Right.
especially in a war.
He was such a bro. I think the moment that you see his turning point is when his love interest, gets involved with everything that's happening to White Base.
Yeah,
She
she's a
ends
spy
up being a spy for Xeon, and she boards White Base, but she has this deep connection with Kai, and then after her, spoilers here, I guess, after her untimely demise, he realizes that her dream was for her little brothers and sisters to be able to live in a world where there would be peace. And then that's when I believe, where he found himself. He's like, if I'm going to be in this situation, I can't be a kid anymore. I have to act like a grown, mature adult here, and I have to make sure that her vision for her family becomes true.
Yes, and it's. I mean, he brought a girl who, in many ways, was very, very kind into his life.
Right.
And I felt like that caused pretty much a big change in him that made him realize that he needed to be a better person. And he really showed that, because at the end of Gundam, pretty much, not only was he putting up a fight as much as everybody else, but he was there protecting the rest of the crew, and he really wanted to make sure that everyone lived through this.
Right. He really was an exceptional fighter by the end of it.
Yep.
His partner in crime, as I would call it, because by the ending of Gundam is them literally working together. Tell me about Hayato in Gundam.
Hayato was a boy who was friends with both Fa and Amuro, but he clearly had a crush on Fa, and he had a giant complex. He had a complex about his height. He had a complex about the fact that Amuro seemed to be special to Fa, but he wasn't.
Right.
And, I mean, it's kind of the truth. Let's put it this way. His biggest complex, and I think it never really got resolved, was the simple fact that Fa ended up with him because she couldn't be with Amuro.
That kind of sucks, to be
It
fair.
really must have sucked hard.
It's like, this is my only secondary option. You know, I couldn't get with the guy I wanted, the guy of my dreams, so I settled for you. That's gotta hurt his ego at some point.
That really did, and I feel like that's. I mean, he has shown that he grew at least a bit of it, because as far as we knew, when he met Amuro again and Seda, they didn't seem to have any bad relationships.
No, not at all. He was actually really excited to see him again after 7 years.
So I feel he did grow out of that, and he became a better person for it. But he also grew up a lot during the main series. I mean, he came from a boy that was trying his hardest for Fa to trying his hardest for the crew. He stopped pushing himself into just trying to be show-offy and started growing more as an important member of the crew. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that Fa also had to grow up and started giving him more attention, because Amuro at the time was kind of pushing everybody away from himself. It happens to a large majority of the ending part of Gundam, where he's not talking as much to Fa, he's not talking as much to the crew. And that's because he feels like his new top abilities have allowed him to connect with other people, and he needed a break from himself and from the people around him. And that was another big part of the show. That was another turning point, where everybody started kind of giving each other space.
Right.
In the series.
Right. His dream woman, I guess you would say, who is Frau Bo in Gundam.
Well, Frau Bo, she had a very terrible start to the series, mostly because she literally saw her parents get power bombed to death.
Right. That's when you see one of the earliest forms of correction, quote unquote, right? Because Amuro at that point sees her and he says, "You gotta get your act together. You need to survive for your parents' sake."
Well, she was extremely in shock, and at the time, that was pretty much the only thing you can think of.
Right.
She's also someone that grew really, really fast, but her character never really changed. I mean, from Origin itself, and then from other content that you see of Gundam, she was already a very nice, caring person. She clearly had a knack for caring for others. So her new position to not only care about the younger people, the younger crew members, but also kind of act as the person that would speak for Amuro and the rest of the crew members that were putting themselves in danger constantly.
Right.
She became that bridge, and she never stopped being that bridge.
Right.
For most of the series. Unfortunately, she kind of gets snubbed in Seda after that situation where he pretty much helps Moro get out of his massive "I don't want to go to space" depression.
Right, you can see it. Like, she kisses him on the cheek, and like she's really
Yeah,
excited to see him again. But she has that feel that she knows she missed out on being able to be with him.
pretty much. Her story kind of ends in a very sappy note,
Right,
especially since you know what happens to
obviously. So
her
now
husband.
tell me about Sayla. Who is Sayla
Sailor,
in original Gundam? Because there is a side story from my perspective of the events of Gundam, and then there's her side story, which is a continuation of Origins. You know, finding out about her brother and chasing him down, and her own secrecy and everything.
you can't really differentiate between the two. I feel like both parts are extremely connected because of the simple fact that she never truly hit the fact that she was looking for her brother.
Right,
It's more of, and even if she did find him, she clearly wasn't going to join Sion or join his side
right,
because of the things he was doing. What she was looking for is maybe finding him and leaving together. Like she didn't want to be part of this anymore. She didn't want to be part of the war. She only cared to find him, and that was it. And she got her big clue in the first couple of episodes where he literally showed himself to her.
right.
Maybe not his face, but it was enough. Actually, I think he did take off his mask. I'm not entirely sure if that was the first
He
time.
takes off his mask, and then she gets to see his eyes and
Yeah,
everything.
it's one of those things where she felt really, really guilty to the rest of the crew for pretty much hiding the fact to the point that eventually when he contacted her multiple times, ended up giving her money and telling her to run away. She ends up telling the rest of the crew everything and telling them, "Hey, here's the money. You can give it to each other. I don't care about the money. I just want to talk to my brother." They were all fairly understanding of her situation.
Right,
She did act out a couple times, and she wanted to kind of stop the things that were happening in her own way, but it didn't really work out for her. So,
right.
but in a way, she did get the reunion she wanted, even if she didn't get her brother back as she wanted.
Right, obviously. All right, so we saved the best two for last, obviously, right? So tell me about Amuro. Tell me who this god of a human being is, and in the points of original Gundam.
Amuro was supposed to be, well, as far as the TV companies knew, they were supposed to be this cool character that was supposed to act super charismatic and get all the ladies and save
Right.
the day. Oh boy, they did not get that at all.
Not at all.
So Amuro was a purposely made this like smart character that was able to immediately pick up the controls of the Gundam, realize what he needed to do. He reacted fast to try to save as many people as he could. But after the fight was over, he went back to his characteristics of being, "I'm a loner. I don't want to deal with you guys. I don't know why you're forcing me to pilot the Gundam. I just want to be with the rest of the people and go somewhere. Go to
Right.
work, whatever. Leave me alone." And it didn't work out for him that way. Well, and when he tried to run away from the problems, because that was his only other solution, trying to isolate himself or get away with anything, Fa was there to remind him that he was now responsible for the lives he saved. Which in
Yeah.
a way is kind of shitty, but I mean, you're in war. You don't get a choice.
Yeah, when you're in war, you have no choice but to stand by whatever beliefs are presented upon you and say this is who you are now.
Exactly. So
So
that played.
here's a gun, or here's a Gundam, and now I understand you're 14, you're 12, you're 10, but you're humanity's last hope. Get on, move on.
War is war.
Right,
No matter how it ends, war is war.
war is war. Speaking of war is war, if there's one faction, there's an opposing one. So tell me about the Red Comet, Char
Char.
Aznavour.
Char was as charismatic as his voice actor apparently was.
Really, he's the
And
original Japanese
yes.
voice actor.
His Japanese voice actor was extremely charismatic, and the story with his voice actor, for anyone who don't know, is that he was actually supposed to go in to do the voice for Muro. He was, at the time, just trying out for all these different anime main character voices because, in his own words, he was just broke and he wanted to buy some alcohol. So,
Sounds terrible.
so he went up to this, he tried it out, and of course he massively failed. They didn't like him at all. And he was walking out where he met with the voice actor of Muro Ray, and
Right.
and the voice actor goes and says like, you smell of alcohol, and he was helping him get like his shit together and everything. And when he picks him off the ground, he goes like, "Oh, what are you here to try out for?" And it's like he says, "Oh, I'm here for Amura." And it's like, "Oh, I just tried for that one." And it's like, I don't care for it. And then he goes like, "Did you even read the script?" And the voice actor of Charge says, "No. I just assumed this was another kiddie, super robot show." And so the voice actor for Muro pulls out a script and shows him a little bit of the story. And he apparently grabbed the script, saw the page with Char, immediately ran back into the studio, forced his way in, and screamed at Tomio saying, "You have to let me try for this part."
And
and
it was history after that, right?
Yeah, every producer that was there was saying, "No, get out! Are you crazy?"
Right.
And then he got silver like in a second, and then one of the famous lines of Char, which is the whole we all try to escape from our childhoods or leave our childhoods behind,
right?
And in a way to take responsibility. And that line was enough for Tomio to immediately be and say to pretty much say, "He's our Char."
That's it. No ifs, no buts about it. History was made that day.
History was made that day. So, I think Tomio had a great way of picking voices for the characters. So, Char was always charismatic. He knew that in order to complete his entire plan to get back at the Savis, he needed to be charismatic because he needed the support of the troops in one way or another.
Right, which I'm pretty sure by the ending he definitely earned. He earned a lot of praise from different troops.
He already kind of did by being pretty much Kasa and Dakum. Like that alone was enough to
rally the troops and say this is our one true leader.
He's supposed to be the real leader to follow and everything, but I feel like even without that, he could have been a major force. I mean, he was at the end. At the end of everything, he was this pretty much new leader of Sion.
Correct.
Although that didn't work out so well at the end, but fair.
Right. So we're gonna return back to White Base for refueling. Surprise! Stay tuned for a part 2 that's gonna come out right after this one.
Pretty much. And I hope you guys know that we are going to be part of Musicon Connect coming out this Saturday. We'll have a special video. We're still discussing whether part 2 might be part of that or we will do a standalone video for Musicon Connect. But we will be doing our panel. Our panel is at 2 p.m. on Sunday. So stay tuned for that.
Alrighty, well, this is Gundam returning to base.